Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of Replay Analysis with the Pros. Today, we have something very special. It's not a strict replay analysis. We are instead analyzing a draft point of view, and I've got Aaron Shantz with me here today, who has a whole bunch of results. I'm going to list some of them out. Top 8 at Worlds Barcelona, 2 times Canadian Nationals Top 8 champion, including this past weekend, and 2 times calling Top 8s over various callings. He's also an infamous Dromai player. I feel like, Aaron, I remember so many stories of your testing partners being scared of Aaron Shantz's Dromai. I think it was Tarek Patel in particular, where he was going to be on Oldhim, and then you beat him up on Dromai so many times, he pivoted out of it or something. How are you doing, my man?
Good. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate the kind words. The story you mentioned there was always very funny. It was this kind of crazy arms race between the Guardians and myself on Dromai through that era of just they'd beat me and then I'd figure out how to beat them and back and forth. No, it's all fun.
And I believe it ended with you going 5-0 into the Oldhams in your testing partner, and that's in your testing group, and that's when they finally put down Oldham. And they're like, okay, no, let's pivot to Dromai instead, which is just such an amazing story. Because I remember being in Discord chats with people being like, oh, Oldham beats Dromai every time. And then someone was telling me, oh no, Shantz internally is just destroying everyone. And then you top 8 at Worlds Barcelona on Dromai. And I was like, this is the infamous Aaron Shantz. I had just heard your name, and I finally got to put a face to you at top 8 of Worlds. And I was like, I see. The stories were true. The rumors were real.
Yeah, no, all came together pretty well there. Little run hot. Can't complain.
Yeah. All right, so this past weekend, last weekend, you top 8'd Canadian Nationals. So congratulations on that. And today we're going to be covering your draft point of view, in particular because you seem to have a little bit of an affinity with drafting Puffin. And I think that's a very big question that a lot of people have, where they don't fully really get how to draft that hero yet. A lot of people think she might be unplayable, but you've clearly figured something out with this hero. And before we go specifics into the Syndra, into the Puffin part of it, and obviously your draft POV. Do you want to just briefly tell us how the draft portion of Canadian Nationals went for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually ended up drafting Puffin in both of the 2 drafts. I 3-0'd the first one, which is the draft before the one that we're going to be looking at today. Funny enough, with a worse deck, I think, than the one that this ends up being. And then went 2-1 in the second draft with the deck that we're going to be looking at here. But felt pretty straightforward. I kind of went into Nationals knowing that Puffin was feeling pretty underdrafted, especially just within the larger narratives of who was going to be there. The first draft pod, I think the feature draft was a 0 Puffin pod, which was pretty crazy. And a number of those same people were in my pod going into the second draft. So was already kind of on my radar that this was something that a lot of people were trying to avoid. So yeah, felt very good about both the drafts, and going through at 5-1 was quite solid.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that the draft we're about to watch is the better of the 2 Puffin decks, in your opinion, which is just gives us a much better impression of what an ideal Puffin deck would look like, even though the results might not say the same thing. Obviously, I think we can all trust you when you say this deck is better. So, I mean, sometimes the cards don't line up the way you want it to, right? So before we look
at the end of the day,
exactly. Before we looked into the drafting portion itself, let's have a little brief discussion on Puffin in general in High Seas Limited. So I think you've already mentioned you do think the hero is underdrafted right now. Some key points that I think people would like to know is what sort of signal cards do you think what sort of cards do you think are signals that you should be in a Puffin seat? And also, what do you think is maybe causing the hero to be undrafted? What are people missing? And why are they not able to perform or draft this hero very well?
So I think one of the problems that potentially pushes people away is if you're in a very contested Puffin seat, it has quite a low floor on what can happen if, even if there's 3 total drafters on Puffin, and maybe somebody was speculating on it a bit. You really want a lot of class cards, and competing for those class cards ends up being a bit of a problem. Whereas Gravy and Marlin are a little happier to have a higher density of the pirate cards and generics and things like that. You're fighting over a lot more of the same cards in the Puffin seat. So I think a lot of people run into spots where they were in a contested Puffin seat, went really poorly, maybe didn't get a few of the key cards that they needed, and it just falls kind of flat. I think a lot of what you're looking for in Puffin has to be situating yourself in the actual draft and going in knowing that you're in an open Puffin seat. So I happen to have drafted Puffin a lot the last while, again, because it has seemed to be underdrafted. Draft can be kind of self-correcting, so it's possible that changes, but a lot of what I've been doing is kind of gauging in the first like 3 or 4 picks, like, are there Puffin drafters to my right in the next like 3-ish seats? And if I get the sense that there isn't, because you're so hungry for class cards and people are kind of leery of the hero, it's also one of the easiest ones to push people off of right now. So once I could kind of determine that, all right, I don't think these 3 people are taking Puffin cards right now, I'll often spend the rest of pack 1 not skewing too much, but largely trying to just cut class cards and push some really clear signs of like not giving anyone to my left a reason to go into Puffin. And if people are actively looking for reasons not to, then they like probably won't go in. And that's been pretty successful so far, just with how people have been drafting for setting up like at least like one of 2 seats. And in the draft we're going to watch, I believe I'm a 1 of 1 Puffin, and nobody else went in. So creating that space is one of the key things, and you kind of have to be like pretty sure and have like good draft mechanics on figuring out what the like texture of the table looks like to be comfortable going in. In terms of stuff like looking for, again, it all comes down to like class commons, like rares and things like that. But Goldwing Turbine and Perk Up, you'll see, are kind of like pretty big signposts. We'll see some examples of that in the actual draft here. I think I kind of like dip into Puffin around pick 4 in this draft, and once you get into that kind of range, if you're seeing some of those like top class cards, anyone who is like trying to draft Puffin to your right is probably looking to pick those up. And then the class equipment's also very strong, but that can get like, it's mostly like the class commons that are kind of picking things up that way.
Right. So the equipment and also the class cards kind of, it feels like it all hinges with your opening premise, where it seems like Puffin really wants to be the 2-off at most at the table, which makes these cards extra premium and also sort of puts you in a position where you can push people off of it very, very quickly, or you yourself will get pushed off of it if you just see like a mech card missing from a pack. What are your thoughts on the 2 options for the weapon? As someone who has been drafting Puffin a whole bunch, do you think there's a place for either, or do you just default to Blunderbuss and it needs to be something very specific before you play Spitfire, or do you think there's like potentially an even split, and there's enough Puffin drafts that go one way or the other?
Yeah, I think there's a fair amount of nuance to that. I think the more contested your Puffin seat is, the more likely it is that you'll just be presenting Blunderbuss in most of your matchups. You really want to have like that critical mass of like cog makers and just other mech commons to make the Spitfire work. In strong Puffin decks, like especially when you're 1 of 2, I generally find myself on a split. So into Gravy, I'll pretty much always present Blunderbuss. I think it's pretty essential on that end for just ability to clear allies early on before you have gold, and when you're still in that jockeying for like gold position in the early game. If you present Spitfire and they just play a Rigor Mortis on like turn 2 or something like that, and you don't have like cogs or gold in play yet, it feels pretty rough to have to send full attacks to try and clear that. And then against Marlin and Puffin Mirrors, I would often then present Spitfire in those, where I'm more so trying to just race against Gravy, there's some fatigue concerns as well, and just being able to have more game in like fatigue end games and stuff like that kind of bumps Blunderbuss up on that end.
That's a really cool dimension to Puffin that you've mentioned. That is not something I've actually heard before. For example, in contrast to Marlin, people talk about you're drafting a cannon deck or you're drafting a red spine deck, but it sounds like you're saying there are Puffin decks where you will actually do change the weapon depending on the matchup against you rather than just the deck that you have drafted, which I think is very, very cool and is a very important piece of insight that maybe a lot of people are missing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that, thank you so much for the rundown. Now, with that, we are going to go ahead and look into the draft portion. And here we are. Here's your pack one, pick one at Canadian Nats. Remember, this was the second draft. At this point, you were undefeated, I believe, at Canadian Nats. So here we are. This is pack one, pick one. What are your thoughts? And also, yeah, actually, I'll let you start. What are your thoughts before I ask some of my questions?
Yeah, wasn't a super impressive pack overall, to be honest. There's the Majestic Arrow, which doesn't do a whole lot. It's pretty anemic overall. So you'll see I've pulled to the front the On the Horizon and the chess piece. Like fine cards, nothing I'm like super excited to first pick. I end up taking the On the Horizon. The block cards are super strong everywhere. Like knowing what's on top of your deck is also just like insanely valuable in this format, especially if you're trying to do like bark shenanigans and things like that.
Yeah, the breakpoint block in a draft format with Treasure Island is just gets you so much value, right? In a general sense, what are your thoughts on staying open in this format? Like, how long do you like to stay open? Do you think you can just stay open for very, very long? Are you that sort of person, or do you want to try and lock in as early as possible?
Honestly, it kind of depends on the texture of the packs and like kind of like reading what people around me are doing. If there's like powerful generics and things, I'll like lean towards that. I kind of want to commit once I'm like sure I have a sense of what the good options are. So like I stay fairly open in this draft. I think my first three picks here are all like generic cards. Like pick two there was a pretty weak pack. I just took a blue block 3. There's no like class cards really drawing me in. I essentially just commit when I see a reason to commit, and that's a little bit nebulous and kind of like shifts draft to draft. Sometimes there's like a crazy Majestic that comes through at the start and sort of like slam and go. Sometimes there's no real strong messages until like pick 6 or 7 and kind of have to gauge what the wheel looks like and figure out what the texture of the table looks like then. So like again, this pack really unexciting. The 3-for-7s are all pretty strong. Like you were talking about before, the breakpoints with Treasure Island. Ways to win that early gold game before you get online are huge, and there's a lot of like trading back and forth to chip through your opponent's armor with 7s and things like that.
Yeah, the previous 2 packs in particular, to your point, there were class cards there, but they were all very, very middling, right? It was like a red and yellow Gravy Bones card. You had a blue Cloud Skiff and a blue Sky Skimmer in pack 2, but they were like blue Puffin cards. The previous pack had like a yellow Goldwing Turbine, so you're kind of just being like, okay, waiting for a real signal over here. And here you see a red Goldwing Turbine, and you mentioned how important you think that card is Puffin. That card is in Puffin. Is this like a clear signal for you?
Yeah, and it's one of the first things I lock onto there. And the big debate is like, here's that kind of question that you were asking about staying open. There's a red Nimbleism in this pack, which if I want to stay open further, that I could look towards that. But this starts getting more towards the point of what I was talking about on like reasons to commit. If I pass this turbine here, I start taking myself out of being able to draft Puffin because I think someone else is going to potentially go in then. And it's like a pretty clear sign here. And based on what I'd passed so far, really no strong Puffin cards. I don't think I've like put anybody into that seat. And taking that there puts me in a spot where I can kind of start enacting the strategy I was talking about before of like cutting class cards and trying to push the people in my left out or stop them from going in.
It's also fantastic because in your pack 2, you might actually end up wheeling one of those blue Puffin cards, like the blue Sky Skimmer or blue Cloud Skiff. So it could definitely just pay off at the end over here. And over here, you see a Rust Belt, which is, I mean, that's like, it's the strongest chess piece in the set, I think.
Yeah, it's very good. depends. Like once you have enough cog generation, it gets crazy. If you're like low on that, then sometimes like the like pirate chest can be a little bit better. But yeah, debated a little bit around the blue there. But kind of to your point, I knew there was some of those blues in the earlier packs, and reasonably confident that some of them are potentially going to come back around, and that I can still pick up some decent blue block threes through pack one here. And locking up equipment early is just so important. And I think someone's more likely to look at the Rust Belt and think about trying to go into Puffin than like the blue Steamboat or anything like that.
So I have a question written here for how much do you value actually sending signals? Because I've heard some pro players say sending a signal isn't that important. You care more about like reading it. Because if you cut people to your left, it's like they're in the worst spot than you are. But it does sound like you care about it quite a bit if specifically you're in Puffin. Is that correct?
Specifically in Puffin a bit more, and I think the biggest mistake that people can run into with like signal sending and receiving and whatnot is like you can't make too many assumptions on what your opponent's doing with the signals they're receiving. I can like lock in and be like confident that I'm like in the right seat and like doing this, but I'm also not like staking my entire draft that like the people to my left are like 100% going in, or like not going in. Uh, Everyone has different evaluations of things, and like these like decision trees start splintering a ton from there. But around here, like I'm like starting to get pretty confident that there's like very few other puffins at the table. Like red skiff coming this late. There's it's like 7 cards in the pack here, 8.
It's pick
So
7. Yeah.
yeah. It's come around like pretty much the whole table, and that's one of those comments that like Puffin wants like as many of those as it can get. The math like works out really well with both Blunderbuss and Spitfire and Goldwing Turbine. It's just going to be one of your best attacks in every Puffin deck.
Yeah, pick 7 basically means what, the person 2 places to your left past that? And over here
Yeah.
you see red Teeth of the Cog as well, so you're still getting red Puffin cards all the way. This is the person to your left is the one who like passes to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I end up going towards the Rally the Rearguard here, having, especially in blue, just insulation in the late game against randomly dying to overpower and stuff like that is like, I pretty much always want the first copy of Blue Rally, just as insulation against that sort of thing. I think I'm a little bit lower on some of the blue Teeth of the Cog type effects than some others. I think Ellie and Frank were talking about it a little bit in the actual like coverage stream, but it doesn't always line up with having the cogs in play to sacrifice to them, and it can be a little tricky.
So this is an interesting decision here. We see you sort of deciding between scrub the deck and a drawback the hammer. Do you talk a little bit about that consideration?
Yeah, I don't really have many pumps yet, and I want kind of like a semi-critical mass of like these like 1-for-4s. I think drawback the hammer is probably the worst of them. But had a few blues that I'd picked up already. I knew that there was some like other blue block threes coming around, and like now especially like once I've seen those like both of them come back, I'm pretty confident in my ability to pick up like blue block threes moving forward. So that like these Puffin blues are just gonna kind of like swing around the table, and Scrub the Deck is basically a titanium bauble in Puffin. So like I think there's like better options for blues there, and yeah, just upping the power with drawback makes sense. And yeah, everything just comes back. Like yellow turbines, blue block threes. I just kind of get to have everything.
Yeah, this just puts you in such a strong position because this sort of near guarantees that you are the solo Puffin. Like just the fact that the 2 blue block 3 Puffin cards were still there on the wheel for you, it just puts you in such a strong position for pack 2 and pack 3 where you can just say, there's a strong Puffin card here, but I'm going to wheel this almost guaranteed, and you just take a strong generic instead, which is not going to wheel.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple picks that come up in pack 2 here specifically that kind of line up exactly on that. Like, cause there's a few like pretty key generic pieces that once I'm in Puffin, I'm really wanting the mutinies, especially. The gold, like these draft games kind of go in a couple different phases. You've got like the early game jockeying for gold, and Puffin really wants to kind of get out of that as quickly as possible. And the mutinies, especially the +2 one, are just so strong for breaking that symmetry where you can just let your opponent get some gold. Be like, all right, I'm just gonna take it back and return serve, but I get to churn faster than you do. And once Puffin starts rolling, it's really hard to stop. You kind of just start presenting crazy damage turn after turn.
And as we sort of do your draft review here after pack one, I had some questions for you regarding ratios. Where
Mm-hmm.
where do you feel like the ideal ratio lies for Puffin? And like, there's so many different ratios to talk about, right? There's cog generators, there's cog payoffs, there's the blue and the reds, and then there's also in the context of which weapon you might prefer. So that's like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to unpack there. But as you're doing the draft review, there, what were you thinking in terms of your these ratios and potential weapon consideration?
Yeah. Always taking stock of blues and yeah, like texture of attacks, pumps, that sort of thing. Ideally, I think like strong Puffin decks are gonna have at least like 3-ish copies of like Red Turbine slash Perk Up are like these like hero ability enablers that let you draw a card off Puffin's ability. Um, and then probably like 1 to 2 more of the like +4 pump effects. Pretty much as many of the Cloud's Gifts and the 0 for 4 as you can get your hands on. And then blue ratios, it kind of starts depending on how much high tide stuff, like do you have red barks in your deck and things like that. But like I'm a pretty big fan of heavier blue counts. This pack was wild with all the harpoons.
Yeah.
uh, but 12-ish blues is a pretty solid baseline. I've played up to like the 14 range in decks that are a little more blue hungry. But it starts to just kind of depend on your cost curve from there.
Okay.
But
So at
yeah,
this
this
point,
one,
yeah, go on.
yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say you seem pretty. I think you're pretty confident you're the only Puffin. So I was wondering whether you maybe take, I don't know, rally the rear guard or something, rally the coast guard, because it didn't seem like there was anything you really wanted to wheel in that pack except for potentially the perk up. So what were your thoughts going through that first pick?
The perk up, I think, is just one of the most essential cards for Puffin. More mid-tier comments, I think I'm a little more willing to try to like wield that way, but at this point in pack 2, there are people that potentially like stay open a lot of the way through on pirate stuff, and if they saw like this Puffin stuff going around, maybe they like open a majestic and be like, you know what, it was crazy open, I'm going in. So like perk up's one that I'm not quite willing to risk randomly getting snapped up at that point. But on the flip side, so here, one of those mutinies I was talking about is in here, and there's also the like Tighten the Screws, where Titan's a lot less essential than it's still quite solid, but not perk up level. And so that one I'm like fairly certain I can wheel, and the mutiny I like do not think is coming back, and is I think just one of the most important cards. I want my blues to basically be blue block threes and mutinies. Is kind of like the ideal setup. I would like slam dunk have like 3 to 4 copies of the +2 mutiny in my deck if I could.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you did already allude to this, but a strategy that people might have against you as Puffin in the draft table is just starve you of gold, and you already mentioned
Mm-hmm.
usually it's just the way to just deny them from executing that strategy. And Battalion Bark is the strongest one, right? In your opinion?
Yeah. I saw some like stuff in the chat when I rewatched the like videos of this afterwards, like people being confused about me not taking the Go Again one because I think they were both in that pack. And funny enough, I think the Go Again one is potentially the worst of the three. The +2 is just pretty close to just being on rate, and if depending on how you value the gold, is just a straight up on rate or above rate blue. Uh, and the overpower one can just end games. Like in combination with the +2 one can get kind of crazy at times, where you get these weird end game stacks where you sacrifice all of your golds, get back to these like 2 mutinies that you maybe pitched earlier. steal 2 gold, +2 overpower kill you, stuff like that.
You must feel so good there, by the way. Pick 3 of pack 2, just finding a unicycle. Just, I mean, was that just another card you also just weren't willing to wheel? Like, just too high of a power level to.
Yeah. Like it being there does tell me that I've like pretty like confirms that I was successful in pushing the like 3-ish people to my left out. But it's just so important in your foot slot. Like there's nothing that replaces it, and it's one of those cards that if there's nothing left in the pack for somebody like back around coming towards me, if there's no gravy cards for them, they're like, well, I'm just gonna hate this random unicycle so that the crazy puffin player doesn't get it. I just want my equipment unlock.
That makes sense. I want to talk about this on the horizon a little bit. It does seem something like you're considering. It was also your pack 1 pick 1, which I mean, it's a very strong pack 1 pick 1. But do you feel like it's perhaps, how to say, it does sometimes feel like the most awkward in Puffin because you are a very aggressive leaning deck and you could, in a sense, sort of be run out of gas to a certain extent. So having these block cards could potentially be a little bit problematic. And is that why you took the fish fingers there as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want like too high of a density on like the block cards that way. The first one is solid. It helps with that like jockeying for position early game. I also just want to get my equipment unlocked kind of as quickly as possible here and like not have to worry about that. Especially like ones that don't have good class equipment. So, like the chest and like legs, no one's going to be fighting me on the mech ones for the most part, but the fish fingers, like that's never coming back. So take it while I can.
Mm-hmm. And that one was a very, very solid, easy pick. Red Sky Skimmer, slam that. Like you said, you want as many of the red Sky Skimmers and Cloud Skips as possible.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting decision that comes up in a moment here where I actually get presented with the choice between a red Sky Skimmer and a red Cloud Skiff in the same pack, which is not one that you have to choose between super often. But I think I end up going with the red Sky Skimmer in that case. Just it plays better in like your brick hands if you draw all reds or like that sort of thing, which I think is one of the things that you kind of have to have in the back of your head through any draft like this. Like how do you mitigate like the types of brick scenarios that you can run into? It's why the mutinies are so good. You get to deal with any gold denial bricks, and then like ways out of like blue light hands is also just gonna be ways to like not fall too far behind when you run into those, because you will at some point. It's just how draft works.
Yeah, and it looks like I think we're not quite at that pack yet. Now here you have also a very interesting choice. I'd say yellow Zeppelin, which is Zeppelin's probably the strongest attack, right? But it's a yellow version versus red Titan the Screws.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about this decision.
Yeah, I think I just end up slamming the Zeppelin here. Even at yellow, like it's pretty crazy. I also know that there's the other red Titan the Screws from my like pick 1 or 2 that is almost certainly coming back around. And with the perk up, and I think there's like the drawback to hammer that I already have. Like I'm pretty comfy with the number of pumps that I'm like ending up with. And now with like red turbines coming through and all that sort of thing, I'm not concerned about hitting that critical mass. One of the things I was thinking after pack 1 and like coming through here is I actually don't have a ton of great attack actions to go with those pumps yet. So those are a pretty high priority through here. Like not to go too deep in one direction or another.
Yeah, that's a fair point because your pack 1, you had like 2 yellow Goldwing turbines. In this pack, you picked up a perk up, another Goldwing turbine. So yeah, that's a ratio to keep in mind as well, for sure.
This one was kind of interesting. The Gold Hunter catch is also like a reasonable consideration. I end up the 3 for 5 in blue. Like having blues that are still semi-reasonable to attack with in the end game is something I always like to have a few of. The on hit is still relevant from it, and Gold Hunter, I don't know, it gets awkward at times, and I've spent a lot of picks on like powerful like equipments and red cards and stuff. There's that Titan the Screws coming back, but yeah, trying to trickle blues in when I can, just to make sure I don't end up. One of the fail cases of this draft is if I end up in like pack 3 and just not many blues get opened at the table for me, and I end up having to like scrounge for like bad blues or like not end up with enough. Want to make sure I'm going in with like a solid baseline that's not in danger of having to forego picks for medium blues later on.
And just as you say that, you picked a blue sky skimmer over a red pump, and then now again picking a blue goldwing turbine.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of. I see why you say like this is, in your opinion, the better of your two puffin decks. Because I'm just like, I feel like every pick has been like, even this, the second last pick, a yellow goldwing
Oh yeah.
turbine. It's just
I think
nuts.
I end up with 3 yellow goldwing turbines in my sideboard in the final deck.
And last week, tough old wrench over there, a blue version. Do you talk a little bit about these block galvanized cards in Puffin? Like, what's their role? How important do you value them? Or do you think you just get by without them, kind of thing?
Honestly, like if I end up with them, I'll take them. I really don't prioritize them super high. They can be fine. My biggest issue with them is during that like early game phase where you're fighting over gold and are like doing more blocking. You don't have cogs yet, and these like block 2 attacks look pretty miserable at that point. So like, I really want my blues to either block 3 or be like reasonable to play through like that phase of the game. And these just they're the kind of guard that I think is good when you're ahead. And a lot of what I'm looking for is ways to like break parity or like come back from behind, which I don't really think Tough Old Wrench and the galvanized stuff does. If I'm already making a bunch of cogs and have like extra cogs sitting around to sacrifice to it, I'm probably like on the front foot and like doing okay.
It's also really strange that you say that this is good when you're ahead, but not when you're too far ahead, because if they don't attack you at all, you actually can't even galvanize anything, because these are all
Yeah,
on
exactly.
defense triggers. So you want to be just slightly ahead where you have the board
Yeah.
state, but not enough where they're not attacking you back, which is, again, because people want to gold starve you, like want to starve you of gold, they might just fall in the pattern of, oh, you have all these cogs sitting around. I know you're going to end the turn with some cogs. Let's just block you out and not give you value from these cards, and then just holding this. Like a Pinion
Hmm.
Sentry and a Tough Old Wrench being like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yep. Uh, Wrench I like more than the zero cost one. Like it's at least like reasonable to play. It's got enough power to clear like most allies from gravy. So like you can like, run with that in a pinch. But you can see I've got a decent solid base of blues there. I think 8-ish going into pack 3. Some of them would like to like upgrade to block 3s or like not necessarily have to play. Uh, but you'll see like sorting through of just like gauging totals on pumps, but just pulling all of those to the front here. Uh, like double checking where I'm at on that. There's like 3 premium ones, which is kind of that baseline that I want to hit, and then the rest is kind of just nice to have from there. And even still here, like I picked up a few solid attack actions, but like the only really strong ones is the Zeppelin, the like Skiff, and the 0 for 4. So that's like kind of top of my radar going into pack 3 of like over basically any pumps. I'm taking like Cloud Skiffs and that sort of thing, and like putting a pretty like heavy premium on those.
Yeah, as we were looking through a pack, I was just reminded of what you said earlier, where you are low on those the attack cards, and your pumps look absolutely stellar. I mean, I totally see why you ended up with 3 yellow turbines in the sideboard, which is wild to think about. But yeah, definitely looking for some attack actions in pack
Mm-hmm.
3. Where do you feel your blue ratio is? It's funny. I feel like when I was looking through that, I was like, I feel like you basically have a functional puffin deck, and you are, as you
Yeah.
said, kind of just looking for upgrades at this point, which is just nuts.
Yeah, there's not been a single card that I'm like not able to play. This pack is pretty interesting and quite strong. Bark is just like the best common in the set, and like not passing that. But like after class chess pieces and stuff, the like pirate chess piece here is like the next one that I would be looking for. There's the block for all that sort of thing. But yeah, logging up Bark, you just close crazy end games with it. The card's just nuts.
Does Bark fit the Puffin playstyle, you think? Or is it something that maybe it doesn't quite fit the playstyle, but strong enough that you just slam it here, or you want at least one off?
Yeah, I think it's probably at its worst in Puffin compared to the others. But like it's pretty straightforward to just sit it in your arsenal. I've got the block card to look at the top, like wait for a turn where I can like block with that. See, there's a blue on top. All right, we crack a gold, send, like, and then once you get into pitch stack territory, like you can just like be comfortable knowing, okay, I've like can just start sacrificing gold here and like set up this Bark end game.
Pretty easy pick there, I think. A red perk up. The rest of the pack looked pretty mid.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to actually just touch on the Bark a little bit more because I think people might be curious about this. So, for example, if you see another red battalion Bark come up, which would be wild to think of because I mean someone passed it, but if you see it, would you pick the second copy of it in Puffin?
Yeah, like it gives flexibility if you have to block with one at some point, and like the ideally I'm running a like heavy enough blue base to like make it reasonable. Like I like to have like a heavier blue Puffin build in like that like 12 to 14 range, which you're pretty reasonable to even just have like 2 blues in hand to be able to cast it at some point there.
Okay. Here's a really interesting decision, actually. Copper Cog and Mutiny. We haven't heard your thoughts on Copper Cog yet. Where do you feel like it ranks? I mean, we're about to see your pick, so I'm sure we'll find out, but we'll love to hear from you on that.
Yeah, it's solid. The mutinies are so good. Like Copper Cog, again, kind of falls into that camp of like it's strong when you're on the front foot. It blocks for 0, and you really want to have another cog that you're making alongside it. So it is good with like the Goldwing turbines that I've made. I am fairly certain I can wheel it here. So it is another one of those considerations where I don't think anyone at this table is taking the cog. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to have access to it regardless. And 1,000% want another copy of this mutiny and just lock that up.
And here we see, this is a decision you were talking about earlier, red Sky Skimmer and
Yeah.
red Cloud Skiff. You mentioned it was a resource curve consideration why you end up going for Skimmer?
Yeah, it's just more flexible. If you have to like block with a bunch of cards or like any like all red hand scenario, like I'm just happier to have that one instead. Like you can still like hero ability, make a cog and present 5 off of it if you need to. Whereas the skiff really wants you to have more cards in hand.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because this is still wheelable. What's your confidence ratio that the skiff comes around? And don't spoil it for those who haven't actually fully watched the draft.
Yeah, pretty high. At this point, like there's been like nothing I haven't wheeled. Like this, like Zeppelin coming through here, like this pack 3 in general is like pretty insane. Like, we're pretty fortunate that I just get fed. Like, there's just been all of these attacks that I've been missing the whole time. Pretty much exactly. If I could draw up exactly what I want these packs to look like, it's pretty much this. To like just have this chain of like strong attack actions to like flesh all of that out through here.
Yeah, going to pack 3, you said you wanted more attacks to go with your pumps, and then you got Skimmer, Zeppelin, Battalion Bark, which are probably the 3 strongest attacks that could go in your deck, and then you got an insane buff and a insane blue as well to just go along with it.
Yep. And this one, I see the hat initially. I'm like, oh, I can like lock up my last equipment slot, and then we just have a 6-pick dovetail coming through, which when you're wanting attacks, like there's nothing that's like even possibly better than that. To like lock up that card is absolutely bananas. Like it facilitates just some truly obscene turns.
Mm-hmm. And for the headpiece, I mean, you're kind of just looking for a block 1 on the headpiece, right? There isn't really It's not like you already have your Rust Belt and your Unicycle. That's mostly your equipment setup already there, and Fish Fingers as well. So headpiece would just be a block 1. You're just opting for more power in the deck because you're not trying to be blocking with how strong your deck
Hmm.
is. Let's talk about this
Exactly.
decision a little.
Yeah. This is close. I don't think that the Majestic, like the Workshop, is very good in draft. It's mostly just kind of generic blue block 3. I'm like quite certain I can. There's 2 blue block 3s for Puffin in here. Fairly certain I can wheel those. This is the third Goldwing Turbine, I think, which puts me at 3 red turbines and 2 red perk ups, which is basically the max of like what I would want to play of that type of effect, but pretty happy to max it out there. And yeah,
This
more
is
scenarios. Yeah.
this is wild that this isn't even the wheel. You have a red cloud
Yeah.
skiff here. It's not the wheel we were talking about earlier, where you might still get another cloud skiff. Do you feel like your
Yeah.
blue count at this point is where you want it to be?
Pretty close. So I think uh the blue mutiny put me at like 10 blues. Just based on like the wheels, all of pretty much every pack I've passed so far has had like 1 to 2 like strong blues that I'm happy to have in the deck. The way the first couple packs have gone, my confidence on wheeling them is quite high. So like even here, I think I end up taking the 3 for 7 over the like Teeth of the Cog because I've got a bunch of blue block 3s coming around. I'm not thrilled at the prospect of playing this 2 block, and I do still want some number of 3 for 7s for that early gold game to pressure break points before I get gold online. I found a headpiece. Sometimes it does something. I had a kind of cool play in the first game where I like discarded a random card to put the blue steamboat on the bottom and then immediately draw it again with an empty deck off of hero ability. But there's that copper cog we were talking about, which did come back. And yeah, I believe I end up playing it. I think I bored out in like if I were to play the Puffin Mirror, but yeah,
And
Skiff
there you
comes
have
back
it.
around.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the question. That's the suspense we are waiting for. Did that skiff wheel? And it did, alongside the red teeth of the cog as well. So it was
Yeah.
just absolutely fully open puffin lane for you here. Still
Oh
having
yeah.
a choice of the blue block 3 that you mentioned, getting it
Hmm.
pick 14, and then what's the Christmas present for you at the end here? Oh, oh, a blue teeth of the
Yeah,
cog.
that blue teeth comes all the way back as well. So yeah, pretty
Awesome.
stoked at the end of this with how it all went. Tarek was also in this pod downstream on the opposite end of the table, and he was in that 0 puffin pod in the previous draft, and he was talking to me afterwards and said he for a while thought that he was in another 0 puffin pod. And then he looked up at the end and saw me trying to like hold it together in the corner, and Van Sant standing on the camera behind me also trying to hold it together after watching 6-pick dovetails and crazy stuff like that coming through.
And wheeling red cloud skiff pick 13 or
Yeah.
something. Did you end up playing Tarek in one of your draft rounds?
Yeah. We played in the like round 2 after the like first camera match. So felt that the next 2 rounds after the camera match went much better. I think I got gold semi early off a mutiny, and then just presented 20 damage turns back to back for the rest of the game, basically.
The stream game curse. It's well known. Where you win everything else, and in one game we put you on stream doesn't end up going so well. But that is an excellent segue into the next thing I do want to cover before I let you go, which is how the actual games go. We saw an absolute like insane draft. I don't think I've seen a Puffin deck that's that impressive. How the actual games go, and in particular, do you have any reflections on that game 1 that we did catch on stream?
Hmm. Yeah, I've gone back over the VOD of that game 1 a few different times, and I've yet to find a super meaningful like different route like with the cards that I have and like in that actual game to like navigate to a win. Uh, it's one of the pieces that's just the nature of Flesh and Blood draft, where small decks you have like fairly limited resources and a few spots of all red hands where I have to block with power cards and then attack a cloud skiff into an ally to like clear the board and that sort of thing. Like you run out of gas pretty fast, and Jordan's deck was also quite strong and set up for fatigue. He had a lot of boats, and like that will churn through to the fatigue end game pretty quickly. Uh, like I think the very first turn of that match, he plays an ally on turn 0, and I'm looking at a hand with a blue block cards, a blue that attacks for 2, a Zeppelin, and kind of have to just attack this Zeppelin into a chowder, I think, to clear it, because there's nothing else that could present enough damage unless I want to sacrifice my fish fingers to like go from there.
Ah,
But
that's really rough. Yeah, seeing like some of your cog payoffs before your cog generators, and you're forced to use such a great threat on an ally. Did you at any point change your weapons across your 3 games, or was it blunderbuss all 3 games?
yeah, so played Blunderbuss in the first game against Gravy. Tarek was on Marlin, and I think it was 2 Marlins that I played after that, and played Spitfire into both of them. And same kind of dynamic that we touched on earlier, where with this deck, I would only play Blunderbuss into Gravy, I think. And if there were another Puffin at the table, I would play Spitfire into them as well. Uh, but yeah, the ceiling on the Spitfire turns with this, like, especially with crazy things like Dovetail, like I think my like pivot turn against Tarek was like Turbine, send with Dovetail, untap these cogs, use my chess piece, make a resource, uh, come in with a cloud skiff, like end on Spitfire, just obscene.
That sounds disgusting. And you didn't even mention like unicycle. I'm sure you had like an insane unicycle turn.
Oh yeah,
So-
yeah.
okay, that's really cool to just see that actually in action, that it paid off for you, that you actually use different weapons. Again, I think that's a key piece of insight that perhaps some people are missing on the Puffin side of it, where you actually do want to present a different weapon. Now, you mentioned that with this deck and specifically, you wanted to present Spitfire into Marlins. What would it take? Like, I assume the deck needs to be a bit lower level for you to be like not confident enough to bring Spitfire into Marlin, and
Mhm.
you bring Blunderbuss instead. What does that deck look like? Like is it fewer of the turbines, and then you bring Blunderbuss instead? Fewer of the red attacks, or maybe just too many blues?
Yeah, I think the biggest like difference on that is going to be the red attacks. So Spitfire, like especially if I have a lot of like cloud skiffs and things, I want to be like sinking my resources into the skiffs and all of that. Like those are what I'm putting the pump from like turbine and that sort of thing on. So like you kind of have to have both ends for like that to be what you're doing. Honestly, like I think if you're kind of like lacking on either end of it, like if you're missing on the attacks, then you can put the pumps onto your blunderbuss and be like pretty comfortable that way and still have like places to put your resources. If you're missing on the pumps, you can still hero ability and have some like reasonable turns with like skiff plus weapon and things like that. Um, but yeah, usually in the matches where I'm presenting only blunderbuss, I'm heavier on the pirate attacks. I probably have more 3 for 7s, and have a lot more turns where I'm just attacking with those, and then looking to go bigger on like a couple big turns with like the few like class cards that I do have.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you again for your amazing insight and, of course, walking us through your draft process. It was very helpful to me, and I hope it's going to be really helpful to all our viewers. Before we go, is there anyone you'd like to shout out, and where can people find you?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Absolutely, like one big shout out for me, Isaac Crute, who's like recently come back to the game. Truly like master of the game, but limited in particular. He went deep on this set, and I think a lot of insights and things that myself and others in the Toronto crew have picked up. He has a talent for distilling to the core of like what matters in these sets really fast, and just, like things like the theories around the like +2 mutinies and all of that. Like a lot of those things come from Isaac, and another one more on the constructed side would be to Matthew Dilks, who I registered Kasai for nationals. Went 6-0 NCC with it, and anytime I'm looking to like pick Kasai up again, he's the first person I look to for insight on like what that looks like. He, for those who don't know, he won calling LA with Kasai like back in heavy hitters meta, and yeah, there's no one else that I'd trust more than him for Kasai deck building and thoughts on that. Yeah,
That is
socials
awesome.
and finding and stuff. I'm not the most active on social media all the time. When I do like post thoughts or anything like that, it's usually on Twitter. It's just at Aaron Shantz. Sometimes I'm posting, sometimes I'm not. If you want to pick up random like flesh and blood thoughts whenever I do happen to put them out there, like that's where it's going to be. But yeah.
As you said that, I just noticed something. Has everyone been mispronouncing your name? You said Aaron Shantz, but I always hear everyone say Aaron Shantz. Is it Aaron Shantz?
Yeah, very common. It's been my entire life. It's German roots in the last name, so that's where you get that kind of like aunts sound.
Nice.
But yeah, drives my fiance nuts that I don't correct people, but I honestly stopped bothering to correct people in like high school, and so yeah, both work.
All right. Well, I've similar things with my name. I've definitely been there. I just don't bother correcting people anymore. But I will strive to try and call you Aaron Shantz from now on. I don't know if I'm doing the German vocalization very well, but hopefully it's closer than Aaron Shantz at least.
Oh yeah, you got it.
Well, that was episode 5, replay analysis with the pros. This time the pro being Aaron Shantz. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next one.